In our last video, we discovered the unmarked Grafton pawnshop location in search for Vault 79. We learned that the pawnshop was owned by a woman named Flavia, and that she was in some sort of trouble. In a back room, we discovered an office space with two chalkboards, one of them with columns, and the other one ringed with code words when illuminated by a blacklight. Following these code words led us to map fragments that, when put together, created a map that led us to Vault 79 and Flavia's body. While that video was about how to gain access to the vault, in this video we're going to uncover some of the backstory to this vault and uncover why it is linked to the treasure of Appalachia and how it is going to be a focal point in the upcoming DLC, Wastelanders. Just as we filled out the first chalkboard with map fragments we found in the world, we need to head out and find information to fill out the second board. So heading out into the Charleston Capitol building and heading to Sam Blackwell's office, we have been here before. I did a whole video on Sam Blackwell and his discovery of the Enclave as one of my first videos on Fallout 76. I will have a link to that video in the description below and in the cards above. In his office, we can find a package addressed to him placed on some shelves. After picking it up, we get a few things, but before we look at them, let's head back to the Grafton pawn shop and stick them on the chalkboard. Back at the pawn shop, we can add the missing evidence. Looking at the first note, we can hear why Flavia picked Senator Blackwell. Dear Senator Blackwell, if you would permit me to say this, even though I don't know you, I recognize a like mind, someone willing to look beyond the facile truths that we are spoon-fed. Know that if you read this, I am dead, killed by agents of the US government, intent on keeping a conspiracy secret. As improbable as it may seem, the treasure of Appalachia is not a hoax. It is real, and people have been killed for it. Enclosed is part of my findings. Please broadcast, publish, and distribute. If the other evidence is also shared, you or someone else may put all of the pieces together and achieve the final truth. Yours sincerely, a vigilant citizen. So, although this doesn't confirm it just yet, we have even more evidence that the body outside Vault 79 was in fact Flavia's. She also insists in this note that the treasure of Appalachia is real, and alludes that she can prove it. Moving down the wall, we can see some of her evidence. First, we can check an invoice from the Holland Chase Concrete Company. This is invoice number 9021 to the Holland Chase Concrete Company. We can see some dates on here. January 19th, 73, so it's about 5 years before the bombs fell. In red ink, we can see Flavia commenting on the insane amount of concrete that this invoice is ordering. Below, there is a note. Supervisor Baldwell must handle this personally. Client wants to extend the shipments by 3 months. This is not going to Vault 76. They are using another supplier. 8,100 cubic yards of concrete could easily build several bunkers. What is all this concrete being used for? So just a lot of speculation in that note. Moving down, we can find another invoice. This invoice is from a few months later, and it's for even more concrete than the last one. Note, Supervisor Baldwell must handle this personally. And then in red ink, it says, do not look for Baldwell. I wonder why. These are the only invoices I managed to acquire. Public records show that Holland Chase won a government contract in 72, but the details of that bid are classified. What is the government building? Again, we can see Flavia doing a lot of speculation here. Hopefully on this chalkboard, we will eventually find some hard evidence. Next, heading to the Charleston Herald building and heading up into the editor's office, we can find another package sitting behind Overbree's desk, this time addressed to Quinn Carter. Again, we heard about Quinn Carter in my Sam Blackwell video. She is an interesting character on her own. We mainly know her in the lore because of her interview with Sam Blackwell at his secret bunker in the mire. People were outraged because she didn't give up his location. Heading back to the pawn shop, we can place the evidence on the wall and again read why specifically she sent this package to Quinn. Dear Quinn Carter, I have picked these words with care, for if there was someone to doggedly commit to the truth in Appalachia, I do not know her. I am, I suppose was, one of your most errant fans. And it looks like the rest of the typed part of this note is the same as the Blackwell note. At the bottom though, there is a postscript. Time is short at this juncture. I only trust you. Please go to Clarksburg Post Office and ask for P.O. Box 999. I assumed this P.O. Box in Clarksburg would have been important because the last time we heard about 999 was on a note slid underneath Flavia's door. We looked at that note in my previous video, but it didn't really lead anywhere. So I headed out to the Clarksburg post office and found the P.O. boxes, but there ended up not being anything there. So I'm not sure if these two things are connected. If you know of a connection here, please put it down in the comments below. Below the note to Quinn Carter, we can find some more evidence. This time, it's a Morgantown way station ticket log. It shows a series of heavily overweight trailers that passed over this way station. But more interestingly, the fines associated with these overweight trailers were overridden by a admin. The handwriting at the bottom says, "Late night shipments of extreme amounts of goods, waived fines." I interviewed the sole attendant at the way station, and he didn't even know there was an admin. Someone very connected is trying to make this go away. So again, some more circumstantial evidence. Pinned on the board with this note is a picture. When we zoom in, we can just make out a semi-trailer, but nothing else of value that we can make out. So heading out of the pawn shop, we can go south to Lewisburg and enter Van Lowe Taxidermy. This location was added in the Wild Appalachia expansion, where they introduced the sheep squatch. On the front desk, we can find another package made out to Calvin Van Lowe. Let's go pin it on the board. Vigilant Citizen's Note to Van Lowe. Dear Calvin Van Lowe, to be frank, I hesitate to send this to you, but I am desperate, and from what I've heard, you and your friends are relentless about digging into the truth, despite what society may say. I beg you to hear me out. Honestly, Calvin Van Lowe stands out among the other two people Flavia wrote to. A senator and a well-respected writer from the Charleston Herald, and then there's the owner of a taxidermy shop. Looking down the wall, we can see some more evidence. Suspicious Deaths Overview. Number 1. The work foreman was Antonio Childs, one of the more capable and respected builders in the area. He quit his job at Sunnyfield Construction 2 years ago. Then he went away for weeks at a time and came back with a great deal of cash. His new house is one of the biggest in Harper's Ferry. The neighbors had a host of suspicions about him. Was he a bank robber, a cat burglar? His closest friends and drinking companion said Antonio confined he found a nice cushy government contract and was skimming some of the money on the side. Number 2, Mr. Tillings was killed 3 days after my interview with him when a truck smashed into the way station where he worked. The driver of the truck has been identified as Mr. Jane Doe. Mr. Doe claims he lost control of the vehicle but managed to bail out before the impact. After being held for observation at Morgantown General, Mr. Doe was discharged. There is no subsequent record of his stay. Whatever additional evidence Mr. Tillings was going to provide is now lost. Number 3. I talked to Paige Rockwell, and she said the timing of Mr. Shea's death was suspicious. Mrs. Shea was close to sending the Herald a bombshell. I managed to enter Shea's home 4 nights after the incident. There was ample evidence of a struggle, and clearly the whole place had been thoroughly searched. The government was looking for something, and I fear they found it and silenced her. Conclusion. So there are 3 suspicious deaths. How is this a conspiracy, you may ask? I have sent my proof to several sources. You are just one. I fear your package is one of the least effective on its own, but if it is put together with the others, then a clear pattern emerges. As I have investigated this conspiracy, the number of people that have moved suddenly, stopped returning my phone calls abruptly, met with accidents, or simply disappeared is alarming. These are just 3 of the most obvious. Mr. Van Lowe, please share this with anyone willing to believe. Yeah, it sounds like she sent the least important evidence to one of the least influential people. Pinned to this note, we can find another picture. This time we see a skeleton, but we can't make out any more pertinent information. We are going to be skipping the news pieces, they just repeat what was in the overview. So moving on to the location column, this is where things are going to start getting interesting. Heading over to the Silva homestead and entering the house, we can find some scorched. On a table, we can find another package addressed to Madeline de Silva. Heading back to the pawn shop, we can read about De Silva. Madeline, send this directly to Leia, do not get involved. So we must have found this package in Madeline's house. I wonder why it wasn't given directly to Leia De Silva. Dear Leia De Silva, we have never met, but your abuela speaks of nothing else. I feel I know you. You are a woman of honor, that the oaths you swore when joining the army were more than words. I hope, with your rank, you have the resources to investigate American lives being at risk on American soil. Before we read the next note, we need to listen to a holotape we got with this package, labeled Fletcher Farm Report.
This is a vigilant citizen, and this is an interview with Gladys Fletcher. Can you repeat that?
So those soldiers, they drove onto my land and started fencing off the north part of my farm 2 years back. Well, I ain't one to take that line down. After making a ruckus, their captain came by, said it was for my own safety, that there were dangerous levels of radiation over there.
Did they say what caused it?
They wouldn't say word one. Before I could carry on too much, this man in a black suit comes over, says it's eminent domain, and he gives me this check with more zeros in it than I've ever seen.
And did you take it?
Damn right I did. These are hard times. Everyone else I know took the deal too. We was told to keep it quiet, not to create a needless panic.
Do you ever see any evidence of the radiation?
This is off the record, like you said, right?
Absolutely. You have my word.
Well, that's just it. I never saw any signs of anything dangerous. I got a couple of cows that like grazing that a ways. After the fence, I chased the cows off, but the damn animals always went back. Third time I caught them, I gave up. I figured they were goners anyhow.
So there's no evidence of anything suspicious?
No. Truth be told, I almost forgot about it, except for the noise.
Noise?
Yeah. You could hear trucks coming and going every now and then. At the damnedest hours, too. Couple of times I heard a train whistle, too. But that's about it.
Now we can read the note. The interview I did with Gladys Fletcher is only part of the story. I followed the fencing for approximately 3 miles before I saw a military jeep approaching in the distance. I couldn't see anything from the fence line. Despite numerous radioactive hazard signs, my Geiger counter did not register anything beyond normal background levels of radiation. Even a minor nuclear accident would register at least something for a massive distance from its source. The upshot is that there's clearly no radioactive accident in the vicinity. Why was so much land being cordoned off? What were the trucks doing that Mrs. Fletcher reported late at night? Please use your military contacts to investigate and anonymously publish your findings. If everyone does what they are supposed to, the evidence will be undeniable. Sincerely, FS. So clearly, the military and high levels of the government are involved in this cover-up. Now we have to start wondering what all of this corruption and even assassination are for. Well, in the last column, labeled Treasure, we can get some insight on what that treasure might be. So heading out to the Monoga Police Department, we can enter the front door and can find a package sitting on the front counter, made out to Sheriff Darcy. Let's head back to the pawn shop one last time and pin it on the board. Let's see why Sheriff Darcy was picked. Dear Sheriff Scott Darcy, I have followed your career with interest. You broke several notable cases in Charleston, and even when facing disciplinary hearings, you stood up for the truth. I hesitate to send you into harm's way again, but this is bigger than both of us. So Sheriff Scott Darcy seems like a cop free of corruption. Looking down the wall, we can get the treasure evidence. This time we're going to start with the evidence and save the conclusion for last. Berkeley Springs Police Report. Details of event. C. Ruthlowski came into the precinct around 9 a.m. He had the Charleston Herald article about Shanghai Sally. He said that the woman in the picture wasn't Sally Smith, instead it was Karen Montgomery, a U.S. Army sergeant. Ruthrowski said that Montgomery had been missing for 3 weeks. They were apparently in a relationship. Before the interview was concluded, 2 other people, D. Whitby and J. Seymour, came in claiming that they knew Shanghai Sally. My partner and I went to interview some soldiers on R&R at Mike's. They indicated that Montgomery was in charge of the motor pool, and they recognized her from one of Ruthrowski's photos. When I showed them the Herald with a picture of Shanghai Sally, their demeanor changed, and they excused themselves quickly. Actions taken. Notes were gathered from this, and the chief said that they would be passed along to the FBI. They've claimed jurisdiction. We were told it must be a look-alike. Apparently it's pretty common in high-profile cases. The resemblance, though, it's truly remarkable. Summary: all notes, records, and testimony have been boxed and sent by military courier to the FBI. If the military is involved, it's probably a bad idea to have all the evidence being transferred by a military courier. The next note is labeled Shanghai Sally Casino Shootout. 5 slain in a mob shootout at the Ultralux. Now, I'm sure I don't have to remind anybody about the Ultralux, which appeared in Fallout New Vegas. I've actually talked about this casino before on this channel when I talked about the role players playing as cannibals. I'll have that video linked as well. By Luke Hogan. In a dramatic scene on Wednesday night, the police stormed the Ultralux casino in Las Vegas and engaged in a protracted battle with mobsters. Hundreds of bullets were fired, all mobsters were slain, and 17 bystanders were injured. Interviews with eyewitnesses indicate complete chaos and contradictory stories. Some witnesses report mobsters tried to surrender twice. One eyewitness claims the firefight started with a sniper round killing one of the mobsters. A cashier claimed the mobsters were winning until soldiers arrived and used missile launchers to blow up 2 of them. The chief of police claimed this was a major victory. It's time for us to send a clear message that no one in Las Vegas is above the law. That's kind of weird. I feel like if missile launchers were used, more than one person would have seen that. The next note is Shanghai Sally chapter closed. Shanghai Sally's Reign of Terror ends, by Norman Pennywise. Vertibirds still circle the piers of Galveston, hovering over the charred remains of the getaway boat the U.S. Navy barraged Sunday afternoon, thus ending the crime spree of one of the most notorious Chinese spies in U.S. history, Shanghai Sally. Although it seems like a lifetime ago, Shanghai Sally was only identified on Thursday. Initially, Shanghai Sally was discovered barricaded in one of the high roller suites in the Lucky 38 in Las Vegas, with over $20 million in cash stuffed into several duffel bags. Before she could be apprehended, she allegedly used bed sheets to climb down to the ground floor. In the 4 days that followed, reports of Shanghai Sally's eluding police came in hour by hour, as she made her way east. She was sighted in Flagstaff, Albuquerque, and El Paso, while carjacking vehicles from innocents. One unconfirmed report indicates she even infiltrated a U.S. Army base and stole a fully armed vertibird. Early Sunday morning, Shanghai Sally was identified by a Red Rocket gas station attendant in Galveston, and she sped off to meet with her Chinese handlers in a stolen speedboat. The USS Wade barraged the boat with salvos of heavy ordnance, dramatically closing this terrifying chapter. So in this, it sounds like they concluded that Shanghai Sally was a Chinese spy. But you have to wonder where all that money came from. Did the Chinese give it to her? Did she steal it? Let's read the Shanghai Sally conclusion. Doing research into the conspiracy in Berkeley Springs, I came across their own connection to Shanghai Sally. Sally was a summer news sensation, so I had heard of her, of course, but locals identifying her as Catherine Montgomery made me curious. The more I researched, the more oddities I found. Ruthrowski reportedly went back east to deal with family emergency the day after he gave testimony to police. He has not been heard of since. This is despite his many close friends trying to find him. There are absolutely no records that Catherine Montgomery ever existed. Yet almost a dozen people claimed to know her very well and recall her coming around with other off-duty military personnel. Several other soldiers, regulars of bars and others of ill repute, went missing around the same time frame. 2 of the Ultralux mobsters look very similar to those missing soldiers, but given the number of bullet wounds on the face and the bodies, it's hard to make a positive ID. The streets of Berkeley Springs have more MPs on them than a military base. They've been here so long that the citizens don't don't even recognize how strange that is. So connecting the dots and posting a theory, Shanghai Sally is Karen Montgomery. She and several accomplices somehow made over $20 million and went to Las Vegas. Then the government found them and used any means necessary to silence them permanently. I can feel it in my bones. The treasure of Appalachia is real. Montgomery found it, and she died because of it. So you have to wonder, this is all very confusing. Is Catherine Montgomery a real person? And what really is the treasure of Appalachia? It sounds like we're not going to be able to find that out until Wastelanders. But I honestly don't think it is the $20 million that she had stuffed in duffel bags. The treasure of Appalachia has to be something way more important than that. Alright guys, that's all I have on Shanghai Sally and the treasure of Appalachia. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Also consider following me on Twitter. It's the best place for me to keep in contact with you guys. But anyway, this has been Woodgen TV. Thanks for watching, guys.